Peter Sims, author of Little Bets. Peter, we had Stephen Levy in the studio last week talking about Google. He argued that, or Marissa Mayer actually, I think, argues in his book that Google reflects the education of its two founders, Sergey Brin and Larry Page. They're both Montessori boys, both educated in the creative act. You also make education very central to your book, your theory of the world about Little Bets. Why does education need to change, and how does it need to change in our age of little bets?
You know, it's interesting that Larry and Sergey are both graduates of Montessori, as is Jeff Bezos. And Montessori's approach is it's self-directed learning, where young kids typically, before elementary school, are given problems that they are expected to solve with their peers and with their teachers, sort of asking them questions rather than handing them the answer. And so, I think that, we live in a world where we're spoon-fed knowledge. We're told this is the answer. And you take lots of classes where you're given multiple choice questions. And then that continues all the way through business school, where, we use a very kind of linear, analytical, critical thinking approach to the world, when most of the time you just need to figure things out by knowing what questions to ask as you go. And so Montessori's instilled that, I think, in Larry and Sergey, and it's had a profound impact on the way they think about their own success and then, as you say, the Google culture. And so, I hope that one of the things that could come out of this is that people talk more about how we can, at a very early age, instill this constant desire to be curious and to discover by making mistakes, by learning that, after all, when we're kids, we make mistakes. That's how we learn, right? And then at a certain point in elementary school, we stop making mistakes. We think that's wrong. We think we should be punished for that. And, that's just not the way to create. That's not the way to innovate long term. So as a society, if we don't have that discussion, I think we're going to be in a lot of trouble. I think it's a crisis, really. And early elementary education, I think, is an opportunity for us, whether it's the Montessori model or models like that, to instill some of these discovery capacities early.
I agree with you. I got two children, send them to Waldorf schools, which are the same sort of model as Montessori. But I think you may be right about the crisis, but I think the crisis also extends from schools to universities. I mean, you were at Stanford Business School, and perhaps Stanford is a more progressive kind of education, but I think the universities are the institutions which are about to be destroyed, and that they're the ones who need to learn not only how to make little bets themselves, but how to teach little bets.
I mean, I feel the same way. And when I went to Stanford for Business School, I felt very fortunate to be there. But one of the things I would hear all the time is that people would need a great idea to do something new. And whether it's Chris Rock or these entrepreneurs we've talked about, it almost never happens that a great idea just instantaneously comes into your head, and there's a lot of research about this. And so if that's the case, then how do we teach people to get out and prototype ideas and get out into the world and not spend time in an ivory tower in an office and discover new things? And so, I think the field of design thinking has a lot to offer on this front. And at Stanford, they're bringing in students from various schools, the School of Education, Business School, Medicine. They're teaching them how to use little bets and how to think in this way.
Isn't one of the problems, though, sort of reflects the bifurcation of wealth and influence in the 21st century, is that the idea of little bets, whether you go to a Montessori school or a Waldorf school or you end up at Stanford Business School, makes a lot of sense. It's no coincidence that Page and Brin were both children of privileged, smart parents. But the issue of little bets is something that's entirely missing from 70 or 80% of the people who are struggling to get an education and get jobs, let alone make little bets.
It is. I think it's a broad issue. It's a broad problem. I mean, the Montessori system started with very low-income kids in Italy, and it does have a number of schools that cater to low-income people. But yeah, I mean, with this emphasis on testing that we have, it disempowers teachers from being able to use more of a little bets approach to the way they teach. Nurturing that curiosity, showing people how to do things to discover what to do. Some of the other methods in the book, and it's absolutely a widespread social crisis.
So teachers out there, you better read this book, and students and parents. right?
Yeah, and
Where everyone
I mean,
goes.
I hope that it has an impact on those types of people, because yeah, I mean, I will definitely parent much differently after going through this process of writing this book, you know, and to just encourage my kids to follow their curiosity.
And of course, parenting also needs to be rethought as a series of little bets, right?
Maybe that'd be your next book.
Easy to say when you have kids, much harder to actually accomplish.